My name is Delia Marsh. I am 28 years old. 3 months ago, I was standing in my kitchen making coffee when my phone rang. It was my doctor. She told me the blood work came back and the levels were dangerously high. Not from any illness, from something that had been put into my food, deliberately, and when the police finally told me who did it, I had to sit down on the floor because my legs simply stopped working. But let me start from the beginning. Before I tell you what happened, please like and subscribe to Heartway Stories and drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from. It means a lot. Now let me tell you everything. I got married when I was 25. His name is not important right now, but I will tell you, he was the kind of man who remembered exactly how I liked my coffee and always made sure my car had gas before a long drive. We had a small house in a quiet neighborhood, and for the first 2 years, life felt genuinely good. Not perfect, but good. The kind of good that feels solid under your feet. We also lived close to my husband's family. His mother lived about 12 minutes away, and his sister lived even closer than that. I thought that was a blessing at first. I thought family nearby meant support, meant warmth, meant showing up for each other. I was wrong about that. But I didn't know it yet. My mother-in-law was polite to my face. Always, she remembered my birthday. She sent cards. She smiled when she hugged me. But there was something underneath all of it that I could never quite name. A coolness. A distance. Like she was tolerating me rather than welcoming me. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself I was reading into things. My husband said she was just quiet, just private. So I let it go. His sister was different. She talked a lot, laughed loudly, filled every room she entered. She called me her sister and meant it, or at least I thought she did. We cooked together on holidays. We texted about random things. TV shows, sales at the mall, stupid things that don't matter. I trusted her. Completely and without hesitation. Then, about 8 months ago, my husband's father passed away. I want to be respectful here because he was a kind man. He was quiet the same way my mother-in-law was quiet, but his quietness felt warm rather than cold. He left behind a house, some savings, and a piece of land that had been in the family for almost 40 years. It wasn't enormous, but it was valuable. The kind of property that means something when a city starts growing around it, and our city had been growing fast. According to the will, the estate was to be split between my husband and his sister equally. My husband was also named as the primary decision-maker for selling or holding the property, which meant nothing would happen without his approval first. I didn't think much about it. It wasn't my family. It wasn't my money. And I genuinely didn't have strong feelings about it either way. Whatever my husband decided, I would support. That was that. But his sister had strong feelings. Very strong feelings. I didn't see it at first. She hid it well. She continued texting me, continued smiling at dinners, continued calling me her sister. But something shifted in the weeks after the will was read. Small things. She started asking questions about our finances in ways that felt slightly too pointed. She made comments about how my husband always got the better deal growing up, laughing when she said it, but with an edge underneath the laugh. She started suggesting that my husband was thinking about selling the property without telling her, which was not true, and which my husband denied every single time she brought it up. Then the comments started being about me. Just small things. Barely noticeable. She told my mother-in-law that I had said something I hadn't said. She told my husband that I seemed unhappy, that I had complained to her about him, which was also not true. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I could point to and say, look, this is a lie. Here is the evidence. Just a slow, quiet erosion of trust, drop by drop, that I didn't notice was happening until much later. About 4 months ago, I started feeling sick. Not dramatic sick. Just off. Tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. A strange heaviness in my stomach after meals. Headaches that came on for no reason and stayed too long. I thought it was stress. My job had been demanding, and we had been dealing with the estate paperwork for weeks, so I assumed my body was just reacting to everything. I bought vitamins. I went to bed earlier. I drank more water. But it didn't stop. My husband noticed too. He kept asking if I was okay, kept watching me at dinner with that small, worried crease between his eyebrows. I told him not to worry. I told him I was fine. He didn't believe me, but he also didn't push too hard because he knew I hated being fussed over. One morning, I woke up, and I could not get out of bed. Not in the I don't want to way. In the my body is refusing to cooperate way. My legs felt like they were made of wet concrete. My heart was doing something strange and fast. My husband found me trying to stand up, sitting back down, trying again, and he drove me to the doctor without asking. They ran blood work. A lot of it. That was the phone call I told you about. My doctor said the levels of a particular compound in my blood were dangerously elevated, something that didn't belong there, something the body doesn't produce on its own. She told me to come in immediately and to contact the police. I remember standing in my kitchen with the phone in my hand after the call ended, and the coffee I'd been making was still dripping, and everything looked exactly the same as it always did, and I thought, this cannot be real. The police came. They were careful and thorough. They spoke to me and my husband separately. They asked about everything we had eaten recently, everything I'd eaten that he had not, any supplements or teas or anything that came from outside the house. My husband was white in the face the entire conversation. He kept reaching for my hand and then pulling back because the officers were in the room and he didn't want to seem like he was trying to influence me. They took samples. They took our trash. They asked who had access to our house. The list of people with a key was short. My husband, me, his mother, and his sister. The investigation took about 6 weeks. 6 weeks of pretending everything was fine, of going to family dinners where I looked at both women across the table and tried to read their faces for something, anything. 6 weeks of my husband barely sleeping, of him checking the locks at night and then checking them again. 6 weeks of me feeling like I was going slowly and quietly insane. My husband was questioned twice. I need to be very clear about this. I never believed it was him. Not for 1 second. I know that sounds like something everyone says, but I also know what I saw. I saw how he looked at me when I was sick. I saw how he drove me to every doctor's appointment and sat in the waiting room reading the same magazine page for 40 minutes without turning it. I saw how he cried once, just once, in the kitchen when he thought I was asleep, crying quietly into his hands at the counter. A person who is trying to hurt you does not cry like that. They just don't. But his mother thought it was him. She came to our house one afternoon while my husband was at work. She sat across from me in our living room with her hands folded very neatly in her lap, and she told me she had always had her doubts about his character. She said it carefully, diplomatically, in that way she had of saying something cutting without raising her voice. She said she was worried about me. She said maybe I should think about who really had access to the things I consumed. I looked at her and I felt something cold move through me, because the thing she didn't know was that the police had already found something. They hadn't told me everything yet, but they had told me enough. The contamination was not in our household food. It was targeted. It was in something that only I consumed, a particular herbal supplement that I had started taking a few months earlier. A bottle I kept in the cabinet above the coffee maker. A bottle that his sister had given me as a gift. She had handed it to me at a family dinner with a big smile, saying she had seen it at a health store and thought of me, that it was supposed to be great for energy. She had watched me open it and say thank you and set it on the counter. And then she had watched me over the following weeks use it every morning. When the detective called me with the full results, I was sitting in my car in a parking lot outside a grocery store. She told me the supplement had been tampered with. The compound they found in my blood matched what was found in the bottle. And then she told me they had footage from the health store showing that my sister-in-law had purchased the same type of supplement weeks before she gave it to me, which meant the one she gave me had been replaced, and her fingerprints were on the inner seal. I sat in that car for 22 minutes. I know, because I watched the clock change. I couldn't make myself move. I just sat there and thought about all the dinners, all the texts, all the times she called me her sister. I thought about the way she had smiled when she handed me that bottle, how easy it had been for her, how natural. And then I thought about the property. If I had died, my husband would have been devastated, and in that grief, in that wreckage, his sister would have had far more influence over what happened next. A grieving widower is not a careful negotiator. She knew that. She knew him. She had grown up with him, and she knew exactly how he would fall apart, and she had planned to use that. The detective also told me that they had found messages on her phone, messages between her and this was the part that made me press my hand flat against the dashboard to steady myself. Her mother. My mother-in-law. Not planning, nothing that explicit. But there were messages from my mother-in-law that suggested she knew I had been getting sick. Messages that asked if it was working yet. Messages that were careful enough to be deniable, but not careful enough, apparently, because the detectives had seen a lot worse and knew exactly what they were reading. Both of them were arrested on a Thursday afternoon. My husband called me from the driveway of his mother's house. He had gone there for a completely different reason, to drop off some paperwork related to the estate, and he arrived just as the officers were walking her out. He called me and he couldn't speak for a moment, just breathing on the other end of the line. Then he said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "You didn't do anything." He said, "I know, but I'm still sorry. I think about that a lot." That apology for something that wasn't his fault. That's who he is. The trial happened faster than I expected. His sister's lawyer tried several different angles, including the argument that the tampering had happened before she purchased the bottle, which the fingerprint evidence on the inner seal made essentially impossible to sustain. My mother-in-law's attorney argued that the messages were misinterpreted, that a mother worrying about her daughter-in-law's health was not evidence of anything sinister. The jury did not agree. They both received sentences. His sister got 11 years. His mother got 4, given her age and the indirect nature of her involvement, but 4 years in prison at her age is not nothing. It is not a light thing. I was not in the courtroom for the verdicts. My husband was. He came home and sat down at the kitchen table and didn't say anything for a long time. I made him coffee, the way he liked it, and set it in front of him, and sat across from him. We stayed there like that for a while. He looked up at me eventually. His eyes were red. He said, "I don't know how to feel." I said, "You don't have to know yet. There's no deadline on that." He picked up the coffee and held it in both hands and nodded slowly. "Here's what I want to say, because I have thought about this a great deal in the months since everything came out. I never cared about that property. If his sister had simply talked to my husband, had said she was worried about her share, had said she felt like the arrangement was unfair, we would have worked it out. My husband is not a greedy person. He would have compromised. He would have found a way to make sure everyone felt treated fairly, because that is who he is, and she knew that too, which makes it worse somehow. She knew he was reasonable, and she still chose this. She still decided that the easier path was to remove me. The supplement bottle sat in evidence storage for the entire investigation. The cabinet above the coffee maker is empty now. I haven't put anything back in it. I'm not sure I will for a long time. People ask me if I'm angry. The honest answer is that anger would be simpler. Anger at least has energy in it, has direction, gives you somewhere to put your hands. What I feel is something quieter and harder to describe. Like a door in my house that I keep walking past and will never open again. Like a word I used to say all the time that I can no longer bring myself to say. My husband and I are okay. We are more than okay. Honestly, and I know this sounds strange given everything, the months after have brought us closer than we were before, because we went through something together that very few people go through, and we came out of it still choosing each other. There is something clarifying about that, something that makes the ordinary days feel less ordinary. My health came back slowly. It took about 2 months before I stopped feeling the constant fatigue. My doctor checked me every 3 weeks for the first 4 months, and then monthly after that. "The numbers are normal now." She said I was lucky. She said another few months and the damage could have been permanent. I think about my sister-in-law in a way that I don't think she expects me to think about her. Not with hatred. With something more like grief. Because I genuinely liked her. The person I thought she was, I genuinely liked. And that person, the laughing one who texted me about TV shows and cooked beside me at holidays, I don't think she ever really existed. Which means I was mourning someone who is never real, and that is a particular kind of loss that doesn't have a name I know of. If you have taken anything from this, I hope it's this. Trust your body when it tells you something is wrong. I ignored months of symptoms because I was afraid of being seen as dramatic, afraid of taking up too much space, afraid of making something out of nothing. The something was real. It was very real. Please do not do what I did. Please listen to yourself. And if someone in your life hands you something and something in the back of your mind says, wait, says hold on, says this doesn't feel right, listen to that too. You are not being paranoid. You are paying attention. There is a difference. I still make coffee every morning. I still stand in the same kitchen. My husband still leaves for work before me and still, without fail, make sure my car has gas. Last week, my daughter, she is only 3, came into the kitchen while I was standing at the counter and wrapped her arms around my legs and said, "Stay home today, Mommy." I picked her up and held her for a long time. I am still here. And that is everything. I've had a lot of time to think about cause and effect, not in any philosophical or abstract way, just in the plain, quiet way you think about things when you're lying awake at 2 in the morning, and the house is still and your daughter is asleep down the hall and you're trying to make sense of what happened to your life. My sister-in-law made a choice, a deliberate, calculated, patient choice. She picked out a bottle. She tampered with it. She wrapped it up in goodwill and handed it to me with a smile and watched me say thank you. And then she waited. That is not a moment of weakness or bad judgment. That is a sustained decision, repeated every time she watched me get sicker and did nothing. Every action she took moved in one direction, and eventually that direction led her somewhere she cannot come back from for a very long time. That is not punishment handed down by anything outside herself. That is just the math of what she chose. I think about intelligence a lot in relation to this because she was smart. Genuinely smart. She planned carefully. She thought about access and timing and deniability, and yet, the smarter move, the move that actually required more intelligence, was the one she never considered. Just talking. Just saying, I feel like this isn't fair. I feel like I'm being cut out. I need us to sit down and figure this out together. That conversation would have taken maybe 2 hours and cost nothing. Instead, she chose a plan that required her to maintain a performance across months, across family dinners, across text conversations with me about nothing. And that plan still fell apart because fingerprints are real and security cameras are real, and detectives are very good at reading messages that were meant to sound innocent. Real intelligence is not about how elaborate your plan is. It's about whether you can see far enough down the road to understand what the plan actually costs. She couldn't see it. Or she saw it and believed she was exempt from it. Either way, that is a failure of thinking, not a success of it. What I keep coming back to is the question of what I could have controlled. And the honest answer is, not much, except myself. I could not have known what she was doing. I could not have stopped it before it started. What I could have done, and what I want to say clearly to anyone who needs to hear it, is listen to my body sooner. I spent months explaining away something that was genuinely wrong because I was afraid of being too much trouble. That habit of making myself smaller, of assuming that what I felt was probably nothing, nearly killed me. That is not an exaggeration. My doctor used the word permanent. She said the word lucky. So if there is anything I would ask you to take from this, it is that. Not a lesson about trust or family or betrayal, though all of those are real. Just this one plain thing. When your body says something is wrong, that is not drama. That is information. Treat it like information. Act on it. You are allowed to take up that much space. You are allowed to say, something is not right, and I need to find out what it is. My husband still makes sure my car has gas before a long drive. My daughter still wraps her arms around my legs in the kitchen. The cabinet above the coffee maker is still empty. I'm okay with that. Some spaces don't need to be filled.